Go all in. You can't skydive and stay on the plane. Like, you have to declare it. You have to go all in. And for me, that was a big investment in working with a coach. And what was so powerful is in my fear to start. I remember expressing just how afraid I was to begin. He said to me, how arrogant of you to believe that your gifts are for you. Your gifts are for the people who need them. And every day you don't start because you're afraid, that person doesn't find you who needs you. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mark Rose Podcast. Today I'm coming at you with an episode where I want to talk about some of the challenges I've been going through personally in hopes that it offers you some insights about your own journey and where you might be. I feel like I've been in this sort of extended transition, the Negredo, as Francis Weller would call it, into the depths of the transformation and in the cocoon. And of course, you might be going through a transformation of your own, that a relationship is ending. You're maybe in a job that you hate. You're in a marriage that you're unsure about. You just had kids and it's like, how do we come back to being a couple? Or you're in search of your purpose and your passions. Maybe you're jobless. Maybe you're afraid about money. There's all these different windows and invitations we're seeking resolution. We're trying to find an answer to something. And at the same time, that means we're moving towards an outcome, right? I want this resolved. And so I need to find more information, have a conversation, do more research, do the thing. And once I do that, resolution will look like XYZ. So you can't be drawn into what the resolution has to look like because the resolution itself is undetermined yet. The information you get, the research you do, the should I stay or go? How do I deepen my love? Is it possible? Do they want to? If I'm dating, do they want to create what I want to create? It's only through the conversations, through the exploration of ourself, which is the invitation of the challenge, that you're then informed about what to do and what is the most appropriate, most aligned action. But if you are doing all the research and all the things trying to get to a certain outcome, you're trying to manipulate the universe. You're manipulating the future. It doesn't mean you can't desire it. It just means you have to be willing to actually allow it to not be that. So transitions, which I think we're always in these sort of transitionary moments, I feel like we're always the caterpillar, the cocoon, and the butterfly. We're all three all the time, and there's just different aspects of us that are in different stages. Recently, I had a meeting where we were talking about just like the performance of things like the podcast and all the different aspects of business. And as you know, recently in July, the beginning of July, I left Instagram. Since now I have the producer of the podcast, Kelsey, who's incredible, is running a podcast Instagram account. And that feels aligned for her and she loves it. And I'm so grateful for that. So we do have that there. So if you share this episode, please just tag us on that account, which is Mark Rose Podcast. But me personally, I'm not on it. And my Instagram page with, over 1.1 million followers is not active. That was a big leap. That was like a deep trusting of a deeper calling. And the only reason I actually could trust that, even though it took me a while to actually listen to that, was the exploration of what does this feeling mean? And I still don't know, will I ever be able to relate to it in a different way? I don't know, but I needed to distance and take a sacred pause from it to be able to gain more information as to, can you have a healthy relationship with this entity? I don't know the answer yet, but currently my ongoing answer is no, because I don't think it's meant to have a relationship that's healthy with. Now, with all that said, you might be different. So what I'm saying is not true for everybody. Now, here's the thing though. When I first started writing about relationships and teaching about relationships, before I ever started, I remember thinking who am I to? Why would anyone listen to me? And all the imposter syndrome stuff that comes up when you want to be different, pursue a passion, bring a dream to life. And, I would argue that in my experience, there was always a deeper calling within me. It was just that the narrative or story of who I needed to be, get a degree in finance, get a job that looks like this, or this, all that was louder than the voice of my soul, because I just felt that was normal. It was normal for us to all not listen to the artist within, to the person within who had a deeper desire for more. And it wasn't until I left my engagement in my late 20s that I really, to an incredible woman, where I just had this awareness. I read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And in that book, he talks about how man can get through any how when he has a why. So when you have a reason, you can do anything. And that really resonated with me because that became the foundation of like, if if being of service, of teaching, of being aligned with my mission is my why, then I can get through anything. I can I can navigate anything. And I feel like I've had to come back to that message, to that knowing. Before I ever started, I remember hearing the idea like, go to the island and burn the boats. Like, go all in. That you can't skydive and stay on the plane. Like, you have to declare it. You have to, like, go all in. And for me, that was a big investment in working with a coach. And, the profound experience that I had, I took like money that I had in savings that I've been saving for $100 a month since I was 17. And it just happened to be the amount that I needed for the coach, which is just how it usually works. And I went and worked with him for a weekend. And what was so powerful is in my fear to start. I remember expressing just how afraid I was to begin. And he said to me, how arrogant of you to believe that your gifts are for you. Your gifts are for the people who need them. And every day you don't start because you're afraid, that person doesn't find you who needs you. And hey, listen, appeal to the codependent part of me. I don't give a shit because it really started to I started to see the impact that a mission can have, the impact that a calling can have, that the soul is calling you towards something. It doesn't have to be purpose related to work. It could be just that you're meant to love deeper. You're meant to love more aligned. You're meant to be in safer circumstances. You're meant to do something else with your life. You're meant to travel the world, right? It doesn't matter what the calling is. It's just that it's a calling to an expansive experience for you, which means the version of you that does that thing, like go to Europe or leave the relationship or start the relationship or ask for clarity on what are you guys right now or navigate this breakup with grace and transformation and never again fucking vibes where you're like, I will never repeat this pattern. I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to use whatever moment I'm in my life right now to completely transform. When you can access the deeper why, which I don't think we're invited to explore that a lot in our lives. Like no one asked me what's my deepest mission in life. I was asked, what do I want to be when I get older? Do I want to be an astronaut? Do I want to be a firefighter? It's all these things. The irony, of course, when you get older is you say what you want to be and people go, oh, like be realistic. I mean, the irony, right? People tell us to dream and then you tell them your dreams when you're an adult and they take a shit on your dreams. There was a recognition of like, oh, this is bigger than me. And what's trying to move through me is bigger than me. And that doesn't mean I'm big or I'm meant to be famous or anything. That was not in my vision. It was just like, I'm meant to be of service. And that service right now looks like this. And so I started writing, and the writing started to do well. And then I started an Instagram, and the Instagram started to do well. And I started a podcast, and the podcast started to do well. And it's been interesting because in following all of that, recently, I don't know if you saw, but Mark Zuckerberg just wrote a letter about how he was influenced by the White House to censor information on truthful information about COVID and the vaccines that could cause vaccine hesitancy. And he was also censoring information about Hunter Biden's laptop. Now, what's fascinating about this, regardless of your political affiliation, is that people who didn't want these stories to be out censored that information. Now, look, like when we were in the height of the pandemic conversation, everything I spoke about and stood for was the stuff being censored and propaganda being used against it. But I wasn't wrong about anything. Lockdowns, worse than benefit, not scientifically supported. Mandates, not supported. Transmission, not supported by the research in the clinical trials, the core clinical trials. And so, I was in pharma for 14 years, so there was at least some background. I knew how to launch drugs. I knew how to sell them. I knew how to handle objections. I was watching all this occur in real time. I say all this because the experience that had on my social media, the censorship, is that I got shadow banned, which is not a mystical thing. It's a real thing. I ended up, it had a deep impact on my business, on my reach, etc. So I experienced this rapid escalation of being in my mission, right? Of being like, oh man, I'm on fire. I love talking about this stuff. I'm good at it. I'm deeply committed to the integrity of this work. oh shit, there's pandemic. I'm learning about this stuff. I have a background in it. I'm reading the studies. It doesn't make sense what we're being told. Oh my gosh, the way they're testing doesn't make sense. So all these things were coming forward. And I just was doing what I always did. I would just talk about the things that I questioned, which was normal for me. But then what happened was social norms said it's not normal to question anything anymore. And if you do, you're dangerous and you kill grandma and you're anti-vax and you're a right wing, blah, blah. So we have all this stuff that's happening. And I can feel the friction with my self expression. I can feel myself get angry, but also get smaller. And I can feel myself starting to curate my speech and starting to curate what I'm talking about and staying away from subjects that can be cancelly. But I can also feel this stir inside me of a voice that really wants to speak. And I'm having these conversations with, hundreds and thousands of people, and people are DMing me stuff that they would never share outwardly, just like, I agree with you. I appreciate you saying this. I can't say this because I'm a nurse or I'm a doctor or I'm an epidemiologist. I'm in public health. And you're just like, this dialogue needs, because we've canceled this dialogue, we now have this mono conversation, and you can always have consensus when you cancel discourse, right? Like, it's the perception of consensus, it's not true consensus. And so I think we live in this time of this really dangerous censorship that's going on. And of course, language, I think we can agree on some language is hate speech, but also it's pretty hard when someone is determining what is and isn't misinformation, disinformation, because one of the greatest purveyors of misinformation was actually the government and public health during COVID, which is not a conspiracy. Like, this is all, you can find all this out if you're willing to go beyond the veil. And that's nothing I need to defend anymore or protect, because it's just true. Call me a conspiracy theorist. I could give a shit, because at this point, I'd rather be informed than ashamed. And I'm not going to be ashamed. I'm going to be informed. And so when I look at all this, I just see, like, okay, I've trusted the universe's nudges to me. It took me a little while, but I trusted them. And then wait, things aren't working. Like, okay, like, I've tried to do these different aspects of business. I've tried to launch these different things, and there's been success, but it's more like trucking along rather than like, oh, like, where is the aliveness brought out? And I can sense that doing live events and, oh man, being in my community. The community is the best thing that's ever happened to me in the last, I don't even know how many years. But the Align community, where we do monthly calls, there's access to all my curriculum. It's a vibe, man. And it's the best being in a space where other people want to grow and expand their life and actually step towards healing and change and really becoming exceptional at relationships. Like, that to me, a shared vision of what's possible when there's dialogue and discourse and a shared passion for the pursuit of, let's call it, excellence, and also a space for grief and transformation. And I do live coaching on the calls, and I have a coach that supports the community. I say all that because there is such joy that's brought to me by that experience. And I've also, when I was exploring like the feedback from the meeting, I left the meeting just feeling frustrated. I was having an existential tantrum, thinking, I fucking listened, man. Like, I walked away from 1.2 million social media followers, which is a dumb idea business wise, but I did it for alignment, and not to get anything, but also I'm like, yo, universe, yo, God, like, throw me a bone, like, give me some feedback, give me some, and I know that feeling. I know the feeling when I left pharma and I stepped into this work, and then I transitioned in this work, and I can just feel the cocoon, the cooking that's happening, the alchemy in real time. And I could feel myself wanting to leave the cocoon early. I could feel myself not trusting. I could feel myself like, yeah, losing, I want to say, hope. There was like this state of hopelessness, but with my awareness of what was happening. Yeah. So first I did an emotional release in my car, where I just stopped, parked, and just like screamed till I got to exasperation 3 times. And I recommend that to people when they want to discover how to get to the edges of self-expression when they're not used to self-expressing, and just to hear their voice, really. When I did that, I could feel a release in my body, like, okay, I'm allowed to be frustrated. And I asked, I was talking to Kai, and I was saying, "Yeah, I'm really just frustrated. Like, things aren't growing." And like I've done all these things for that to potentially occur, and I'm just feeling a bit hopeless. And I said, I got my hands up to the universe, like, what do I need to do? Like, just show me the way. I'll walk it. And Guy's like, well, do you hear anything when you say that? And I'm curious for you listening or watching, if you're in that point where you're looking for guidance and you say, show me the way, I'll walk it. Like, just what do I need to do? And when she asked me that, as I ask you that, I kind of smiled and I was like, yeah, there's a little voice in there. She's like, what is it? And I was like, get more honest, get more savage. It's interesting because I worked with a client years ago, and I remember she said, my goal is to be more honest. And I said, there's no such thing. And she was like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you're either honest or you're not. And so my words came back to me when I said more honest. I'm like, get honest. What does savagery mean? I don't know what it means. I think it means be myself no matter what. And just like let that be the invitation, the conversation, the like, hey, the declaration of what we stand for, what I stand for. That love is about being authentic and being truthful. And last year, authentic and authenticity was the most searched term. So that tells you that people are hungry for this because there's so much bullshit in the world. Like there's so much bullshit. There's so much bullshit. And so I was like, okay, I need to write a fucking article on this. I need to write it, and I need to let loose what I'm feeling. And so I'm super excited to share with you what I wrote from that space of like zero filter, like how am I actually feeling? And like what do I actually feel about this virtue signaling world that is actually void of any authenticity or very little authenticity, and what that does to us as a culture and the impact it has on us. And I'm excited to say, if you follow my work on Substack or don't, there's an opportunity to deepen that work. So on Substack, I was publishing, once in a while. And now I'm going to be publishing weekly. And this is the first one that I'll be releasing that's part of that. So if that sounds like something you want more of, the link to my Substack is in the show notes, but it's markgroves.substack.com. And I'm so excited to be writing on a more regular basis, but also writing completely unfiltered and sharing how I feel about all these things that are going on in the world, the humaning that we're doing, trying to figure this out, and how do we show up as our fullest, most vibrant self when the cultural narrative is to silence yourself unless you agree with everything. And I see a real clash of that coming out. There'll be one free article a month and 3 for subscribers, so 4 a month. And I'm so excited to be sharing on another level, a deeper, unfiltered version of me that I didn't know I was still doing, but I knew I was still doing. And my invitation as I read this to you is one, that words that have never been put together in the way they've been put together are always a matter of practice. So I always remind myself that you'll never ever say the right thing perfectly or in the right way when it's never been said that way before. And so that allows us to offer ourselves and others compassion in their self-expression. The second thing is that I encourage you to look for where you do that yourself, where you're striving to be more honest, more open, more whatever. And it's like, just be that. And it's like, I recognize that I'm brought back to all these lessons that I had long ago when I went through the transition from pharma to today, and realizing that all leaps are similar in nature, that you're becoming someone you've never been. So you don't know how to trust it yet. You can't even trust who you are because you become that person through the leaping. You don't even know that that part of you exists, but I'd argue that you know that part of you exists because the calling is from a time that's nonlinear. It's the future version of you that's saying like, yo, let's fucking go. And, it's a weird pull of the string. Because the soul's going, we already know this is the way. And we're going, I don't like that way because it causes too much disruption or makes me fear not being liked. And it's like, isn't that the path to liberation? Is walking the path that is scarier because you know that that's the one that ultimately brings you the most joy, the most adventure, and the most pride for who you've become along the way. And so, regardless of the outcome you might be moving towards, don't get lost in that. Be committed to the fullest version of you today, every day, and every moment. And that's the gift that you bring everybody. All right. So, here's the article. It's called Why Virtue Signalers Killed Authentic Virtue. There's a saying that if you stand for nothing, you fall for anything. I think they have it backwards. I think we're in a time where what is more true is that if you stand for everything, you stand for nothing. I don't know when it started, but I'm tired of the bullshit. I see all these people posting all the things they support, how virtuous and good they are, how much they love everyone and love and light and fucking blah, blah, blah. How they wear masks and get boosters and support war, are against war, and my body, my choice, unless it's an experimental gene therapy. Oops, I mean vaccine. So many people pulling the threads of virtue, extracting social status, putting up a white flag that says, don't come after me. I support the current thing. Look, I'm all for fighting for causes. I'm all for people using their voice to stand for what is important to them. But what I've seen, especially in the wake of cancel culture, is that a lot of people are in a fawn response. Terrified of being judged, shamed, attacked, villainized, or whatever else may come for you if you're not pro everything. Pro vaccine, pro trans rights, pro Ukraine, pro Palestine. Oh, wait. Pro is. Oh, wait. That one got trickier, didn't it? When shame and fear causes us to support something we may not fully support nor understand, we become part of the mob that we're afraid of. Why? Because we feel unconsciously ashamed that we sold our own values out. We folded, so you better fucking fold too. Here's the thing though. This actually goes deeper into the human psyche than you might think. And you also might be thinking right now, F you, Mark. I am authentic in my virtue. Sure, you may be. And let me clarify. If you believe you're not capable of being captured by an ideology or ideologies, and that your virtuosity could never come from a place of manipulation, well, that's exactly what makes you susceptible. Your blind spot is the doorway. Okay, now back to the fawn response. When we go into fear and or we feel an imminent threat, in this case, the fear of cancellation or not belonging, our nervous system goes into a sympathetic or parasympathetic response, aka fight, flight, freeze, fawn. The fawn response is a people-pleasing response. It's playing small and getting small to reduce how much we're perceived as a threat. In dogs, this looks like rolling over and exposing their belly and or maybe peeing a bit. In humans, it looks like compliments, agreeableness, pleasing and appeasing, and prioritizing others over ourselves, and maybe peeing just a little bit. This might also be known as codependency, and my wife and I wrote a book on it called Liberated Love. While these responses are great when we're actually under threat, it can also be a huge block to authentic connection. And the avoidance or fear of conflict on the outside of us has us bury the conflict inside of us, which leads to inflammation and things like autoimmune. Humans are rewarded for signaling that we are virtuous and or victims. The combination is called virtuous victim signaling. There's a great article written by Corey Clark where she explains it perfectly. Newly published research indicates that people who more frequently signal their victimhood, whether real, exaggerated, or false, are more likely to lie and cheat for material gain and denigrate others as a means to get ahead. Victimhood signaling is associated with numerous morally undesirable personality traits, such as narcissism, Machiavellianism, which is a willingness to manipulate and exploit others for self-benefit, a sense of entitlement, and lower honesty and humility. Scholars from the Immorality Lab at the University of British Columbia created a victim signaling scale that measures how frequently people tell others of the disadvantages, challenges, and misfortunes they suffer. Those who scored higher on this victim signaling scale were found to be more likely to virtue signal, to outwardly display signs of virtuous moral character, while simultaneously placing less importance on their own moral identity. In other words, victim signalers were more interested in looking morally good, but less interested in being morally good than those who less frequently signaled their victimhood. In one study, participants who scored higher on virtuous victim signaling, which is the combination of victim signaling and virtue signaling, were, on average, more likely to lie and cheat in a coin flip task in order to earn a bonus payout. In another study, participants were asked to imagine a scenario involving a colleague with whom they were in a competition in which something felt off, even though the colleague behaved in a genial manner. Highly virtuous victim signalers were more likely to interpret this ambiguous behavior as discriminatory and to make accusations about mistreatment from the colleague that were never described in the scenario. Oh man, like that's all so crazy. But let's read that again. Participants who scored higher on virtuous victim signaling were on average more likely to lie and cheat in a coin flip task in order to earn a bonus payout. Wow. So lying to manage the perception of themselves and more interested in looking good than being good. This BS needs to be called out. And I have witnessed its toxicity run rampant on social media for the last 10 years. And it's in large part why people, especially younger people, are suffering from anxiety and depression at such alarming rates. We are terrified to be ourselves. We're terrified to say something we're not allowed to say. We're terrified to explore the nuance of all these subjects that feel so like booby traps that if you have any view that is outside the main held view of the cancelers, then you are done. And that's at least the perception that we're living by that keeps us silent. So what's the solution? Well, first off, stop playing the fucking game. Second, share how you actually feel. Start to question why you believe what you believe. Understand both sides. Get your own opinions and your own identity. And look for where you bend and break yourself to maintain membership to groups, family, and community. I know the pain of saying what you think you need to say versus what you want to actually say. I know the pain of self-censorship. And I also know what it feels like to say no more. Our world needs dialogue now more than ever. It needs authenticity now more than ever. This is what amazing relationships, families, and communities are built upon. Truth over feelings, realness over bullshit. Let's fucking go. So if you like that and you want more of that, then go to my Substack and subscribe. And you'll be getting 4 of those doses in your inbox a month. And, look, no matter how what I read landed for you today, for me, there's this recognition that you don't use your voice so that people will agree with it. You use your voice so that you'll hear it. And that's a powerful moment of transformation for all of us when we actually place that ahead of agreeableness. And this is all part of the healing of our codependency, but it like moves from the interrelational space to the meta, to the community, to the collective. And if we're all willing to say the wrong thing, then we can become wiser. We can actually come to deeper awarenesses because of the diversity of our thoughts. And there's something courageous about taking the leap to self-express that is so contagious as well. When we heal, everyone heals. And that's the beauty. Hurt people, heal people, heal people. And I know those subjects that I name in my writing are challenging ones. They're ones that people are very sensitive about, and people should be sensitive about them. But the sensitivity should not negate diversity of thought. And that shouldn't be the thing that controls what we're allowed to talk about. So with all that said, make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button, and let's go. I'll see you on the next episode.